Welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Quiet Carry Waypoint Large. I have reviewed recently the Quiet Carry Waypoint LC. This is a much thicker, beefier knife. This one's in a magnet cut steel. I enjoyed this one a whole lot, especially whenever I need to do some rougher stuff. But I think I prefer the thin, slim, and sleek nature of the Waypoint, original Waypoint. Now this is quite a bit bigger than the original. As you can see here, if you go pivot to pivot, it's a good bit larger. If you go butt to butt, you can really see how much bigger it is. Now I still like this one a whole lot. This one, I completely forget it's in the pocket. And believe it or not, I don't really realize I got this one in my pocket all that often. Still a really good size, especially for its super slim and sleek nature. Like I said earlier, it's coming in at 8.5 inches long with a 3.7 inch drop point, clip point blade, they're calling it, of Vanex super clean steel, which is one of my favorite steels because it's a nitrogen based steel. So it's highly corrosion resistant. And the edge retention is close to LMAX M390, and it's fairly tough as well. So perfect steel for somebody like myself that lives here in the South where we have super high humidity and a lot of my stuff can rust on me rather easily. I don't have to worry about this one at all. You have a very needle-like point for piercing, doing drag cuts. You have an excellent row of fine cut jimping there. It grabs a hold of the thumb when you need it, but if you don't, it's not going to tear up the thumb either. Excellent sharpening choil. You're going to get several sharpenings before it starts to widen back here. I went with the stone wash finish, as you can see there. It also comes in a satin finish. I just prefer stone wash. It hides wear much better, and it's not as much of a fingerprint magnet. You can kind of see a thumbprint right there, but it's usually not all that bad. This knife right here has a high hollow grind that's nice and deep, comes down to around 16 thousandths behind the edge, and it has a very thin blade stock at 0.089. So this thing should be a slicing machine. Let's find out. I did have to end up sharpening this knife because I lost the content for the rest of it. I don't know how. I do know how many cuts I made with the sisal rope though. I think I made 75. That's what I had written down. And I remember it did good. But you do want to sharpen, you know, especially Vanex and other steels. Like anytime you get something from a factory, they usually sharpen it on a belt and it's got fatigue steel. And it's always good to sharpen it up. Now we're testing the ergos on this piece of pine, making fine curls very easily. I mean, very fine curls. That geometry with that thin blade, this thing is just a slicing machine. Now, being that the handle scales are so thin, I think they're like 0.37 inches thick, so it's very thin. So even though it was comfortable, it may start to fatigue your wrist and forearms after a while doing this, but I just want to show how deep it's biting. As you can see, you can use that tip. You do have to lift your wrists up a little bit higher than I would really want to, but it can be done. But it is going through this material effortlessly. It did just as good before I sharpened it. And, you know, now that it's sharpened, this thing is just blasting through it. I stopped at 600 grit and stropped it with 12 micron gunny juice on leather. And I can't explain how wicked sharp it is. It is push cutting this 1/2 inch sisal rope effortless. And you have perfect amount of belly to easily be able to cut this on a flat surface. You'll see me even transition to the pointer finger grip, which is not something I usually do unless it's slicing really well. So I don't know. I have taken Vanex to a mirror polish, and it's super sharp, but it just doesn't hold that keen edge as long. I like the aggression that the 600 grit does. Oh, and the factory bevel on mine was 20 degrees per side. That's another positive. I will probably reprofile it once I am completely done with the testing portion to probably 17 or 18 degrees. That way this thing is going to be a performance beast. But you usually see your max performance after the third or fourth usually about the third sharpening. But all in all, we end up getting through 170 cuts before I run out of the piece I cut, and without a doubt, it could have cut probably another 170. Now, I won't check this edge because I have the original edge just so you can see where it was at with the factory edge. I can tell you right now, this edge is still screaming sharp. It can still shave hair. So no real point in checking this one, but I will show you the original footage from that testing. Now let's check that edge out. Pretty good. Got a few little small catches, like one right there, one right there. Other than that, not bad. It'll definitely do way better once we sharpen this up. Now let's take a look at the deployment action of this knife. It is riding on phosphor bronze washers, and their knives have some of the smoothest actions that I have on any of my other knives, especially with the phosphor bronze washers. They get so silky smooth, and being that my right hand is gimped out still, I'll show you a left-handed, well-tuned detent. This thing comes firing out. I mean, firing out. I can still slow roll it if I want. Those thumb studs offer perfect amount of traction. As you can see, they have some texture right there. I don't find them to be uncomfortable. I can still reverse flick it. Now, it's not as easy to reverse flick because that thumb stud is so close right here, but you can just look, put your fingernail right underneath it and it comes rocketing out. But the regular thumb flick is probably the best. It really, really shines. And I will tell you this, handling some of my original quiet carry knives that are on phosphor bronze washers, they get ridiculously smooth. And I have to say, the newer ones like my quiet carry Drift L, it came stupid smooth out of box, and this one did as well. So I can only imagine how smooth this thing's gonna be once I've carried and used it and opened and closed it a few thousand times like I have those other ones. So love that smooth action. I like a nice bearing action as well, but there's something to say about a nice and silky smooth action with phosphor bronze washers. Your tolerances have to be pretty good to get a nice smooth action without it pinching in any spot, and they do a great job with that. Mine has a nice positive detent. Now let's take a look at the handle area. The knurled finish is my favorite finish on their tie that they do. I absolutely love it. My only gripe is I wish they would do it on the back side as well. Not the biggest deal, but I think it would look a lot nicer. They could put a little flat spot underneath the pocket clip, but oh well, not the end of the world. Still love their knives. Got a nice chamfer that goes all the way around. There's no sharp spots where you don't want them to be. And I have to say, with this fairly neutral handle, it does kick up a little bit right there, but they did a good job of rounding that over. But for my medium-sized hands, I have a bunch of handle left over. And one big plus over the original one is that this little area, I find that it can be a little uncomfortable sometimes depending on how hard I'm using it, just because it's so small and my finger just barely fits in that little slot. Well, on the large, it's a lot bigger, so my finger easily fits in there and it's a lot more comfortable. So this one should definitely fit your large, extra large hands just fine. Talked about it during the wood shaving that being that the handle scales are pretty darn thin at 0.37, you know, if you're going to be doing a lot of hard stuff with this for a good amount of time, it's going to probably start to fatigue your wrist and your forearms from really squeezing down on that handle so it doesn't spin in the hand. But, you know, for all the stuff I did, I was fine. I had no issues whatsoever, and this thing was a top-notch slicer. On the show side, your pivot and body screws are accessible on the lock side. You have a tip-up, reversible wire pocket clip that is deep carry. All your hardware is Torx T8. Love that. You have the signature 4 dots for quiet carry right there. Everything on this knife is highly corrosion resistant. Your lock bar is made of LC200N. We all know that that's highly corrosion resistant. The Vanex Super Clean is super corrosion resistant, and I think this is a marine grade stainless clip if I remember correctly. And I don't remember if the hardware's tie on this one or marine grade stainless. If I remember and I find that out, I'll put it up on the screen. We have perfect blade centering, nice and tight fitment in there. Besides being super slender with the blade and the handle, you have a very small tie backspacer, and you still have tons of skeletonization on that show side scale. Well under that ounce and inch that some people care about it, 3.44 ounces. Awesome. The lockup on my knife, I'd say, is around 50% or so. Access to that lock bar is excellent because this comes down a little bit lower. They also have a chamfer on that lock bar, so it's not uncomfortable. Easy to get my thumb in there, and you have a nice positive engagement. Now, I have no movement up or down, left or right, but I can definitely flex some because of how slender everything is, so I don't see that to be an issue. Now for some quick size comparisons, we have the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. It's a little bit smaller than the Rat 1, and it's a good bit bigger than Rat 2. It's very similar to the Griffin Co. Scout F3.5 and similar to the Chris Reeve Sabenza 21. Next up, we have the ZTO 640 and the Spyderco PM2. It's almost identical to the 0640 and it's bigger than the PM2. And last, we have the Tuya Kaladin and the Quiet Carry Drift L. As you can see, it's about identical to the Kaladin and it's a good bit bigger than the Drift Large. Now for my nitpicks and complaints, the only thing is it's just being nitpicky. I would have loved to see that texture on both sides. I know that would make the price go up, so I get it. Because these are a premium knife. You have premium steel, pretty exotic steel. You don't see Vanex all that much because it's kind of hard to get a large quantity of it. At least that's what I've heard. And you got a nice size knife here with nice tight tolerances, nice and smooth action, nice detent, and it's also very, very slicey. So this one comes in at $340. They're currently sold out, but they will be back in May. I apologize for that. I did not know that till after I shot the majority of this video, but I will do a community post when they do land for those of you who do want to get in on this. I can't say enough good things about Quiet Carry. I've owned, I think, every one of their models now, and I absolutely love them. I have that Quiet Carry Edgewater, I think it's called, video coming very soon. I'm doing the testing. I'm trying to get some meat processed with it just so I can have that because of the type of fixed blade it is. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this one. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.